What's up, y'all? This is Mike Manzer with another Manzer Faust Productions video. And I'm a little late this week. It's Wednesday. Usually do these on Monday, but, you know, I got caught up in a few things this past week. But I'm here right now. Gonna do probably what's gonna end up being one of my longer videos, at least over an hour. And I wanted to do this for a while. Never really did it before, and I was even toying with like doing this as a series, like doing kind of a reoccurring thing of this, but I got enough series happening at this time, and it's like, some of them I barely come back to. Like, I still want to do like label series and stuff like that. And I've only done one like regional discussion video, so try to focus on those. And I figured, enough of these, there's a good amount of these, but I can talk about them all in one video. There's no reason to try to drag it out longer than it has to be. And this is going to focus on live albums. And, there's a ton of live albums that I have that I'm just kind of indifferent on. They're live, but it's like they add nothing to the original versions of the songs. It's kind of redundant in that way. But I went for records in this video that are like very important to me in the way that they recontextualize these songs, like the sound changes. I like records where I automatically will go to the live cut of those. And there's a few that I didn't pull. Some honorable mentions I can throw out there. Stuff like Allman Brothers, believe it's Fillmore East. There's a ton. I mean, it's an endless array of stuff. Obviously, the live Foghat record is one that comes out of people's mouths a lot. I ended up having like 4 or 5 copies of the live Leonard Skinner record, which I still have not listened to. It's just I ended up with a shit ton of copies of it. I don't know. I'm not really a big Leonard Skinner fan to begin with, so I've never really had any need to dive into that. Maybe they do the songs differently. I don't really care. Live Killers by Queen, I don't own, but that's a pretty good one. I love the version of We Will Rock You on that. Way superior than the studio clap stomp annoying version you've heard at every sporting event, since the beginning of time, pretty much. It's that's a great record. Don't own it. So I don't feel the need to really go too much into that. Recently talked a bunch about Space Ritual in a couple of videos. Not going to dive into that, even though that's technically a live album. So I wanted to go for stuff that I haven't, talked to death on this channel. I might have mentioned a few of these. I definitely have mentioned this first one probably a few times. Maybe not, though. I don't know. Anyway, so I kind of went in like an order from like, kind of your basic kind of classic rock, glammy kind of stuff, into like metal, and then into punk and hardcore kind of stuff. So, this kind of a progression and intensity, I guess, throughout this. Trying to go in some kind of order. But I wanted to start off with probably not only the greatest live album of all time, but like my favorite album of all time. It's like, this is such an important record to me. And yeah, there's a couple of songs on here that like have been covered to death, but maybe I'll skip over a couple of the songs on this, but this is like pretty flawless. And if you didn't have that context, it would be pretty listenable anyway. So, and really this album is so important beyond the music, just the atmosphere of the record, where it was recorded, how the audience is used. This does everything to perfection that a live album should do, and an album in general. It should put you into a time and place. You can hear the echoing from the steel in this place. You can hear, the audience getting restless, and, the kind of banter between, the people performing on stage and the prison guards. I'm going to give it away. This is Live at Folsom Prison by Johnny Cash. You can also include, San Quentin in this. I just don't like in these like kind of topic videos showing multiple albums by the same artist. And this is truly one of the greatest albums ever. For me, this has always been my number one. There's just such like a warmth and comfort in this that I get. You get a mixture of everything that Johnny Cash was great at. You have the, tear-jerking, just like dark ballads, stuff like Dark as a Dungeon, Long Black Veil, The Wall, Send a Picture of Mother. Green Green Grass of Home, and Greystone Chapel. You got that like religious aspect to it, but it's almost universal. These songs are very like, personal and homely, and they're very relatable to prisoners. These people who are taken away from their home, and they have this kind of need to return to like their freedom and to their homes and their families, and these people that they might have like hurt in the past, and they're looking for that redemption. And these songs just like convey that so beautifully. And there could have been this feeling of like, Cash talking down to the prisoners. It's like, that was definitely a possibility. And he, I've heard interviews and write-ups of this album talk about that possibility, that this like audience could definitely turn on them like nothing. There was probably performances before this that were not captured for prosperity that did go very wrong, and this was the complete opposite. I'm pretty sure at San Quentin, Merle Haggard was in the audience, and we all know what came of that. Very important figure in this kind of thing, like really humanizing these prisoners, giving them, they took some, arguably like wrong paths in life. A lot of them might be innocent. A lot of them might, have been brought up on charges that are very trumped up to like, keep them in prison, because the wealthy, or the more well-off people in their areas just didn't want them around. There's so many different things within this. And Johnny Cash and his band are not afraid to like kind of pick on the guards and their kind of their traditions and everything like that. One of the funniest lines on here, which is kind of ruined on the CD because it doesn't bleep it out. It's kind of a little lost. There's some extra songs on the CD that I'm not as big on. The song Busted is a pretty big song, but I've never been a fan of it. There's some jokier songs on this that I think really do work, though. Cocaine Blues is a jam. It's such a rager. Great. That's one song that if somebody pulls that out during like a open mic or a karaoke or something, I'll definitely be down with that. I Still Miss Someone, I forgot to mention earlier. That could fall into those like really great ballad songs. Just a beautiful melody to that one. 25 Minutes to Go is a pretty funny kind of the last 25 minutes, minute by minute, of like right before the guy goes to the gallows and is hung. He's like, oh, maybe the mayor will call, and like, nope, he's out to lunch. It's not gonna happen. You can't get out of this. And it's just those last few minutes of like, man, this world is so beautiful. Why would I want to die? And then boom, gone. And it's just very poignant, but he's able to add that humor and that kind of like dark um, comedy of it, like pitch black comedy, and it's just so fucking great. Orange Blossom Special, like he's always killing at those like train songs, you know, the kind of, you know, moment in time, uh, you know, building that atmosphere. And, you know, there's a lot of speak of trains on this because a lot of people are shipped to the prison on a train. They leave the prison maybe on a train. You know, it's this sort of romanticism yet like horror of these train rides. Um, you also got a dirty old ex sucking dog, which is fine. I don't have a problem with it. I find it pretty funny. It's just about some guy who's pissed off at his like. It's almost like a skit. It's not even really like a song, but it works. It's pretty fun. It's a guy who's like tired of his neighbor's dog getting into his like chicken coop and eating all of his chickens and their eggs and stuff. It's pretty funny. Um, One of the funniest stupid songs of all time, "Flush from the Bathroom of Your Heart." And it's just the reaction from the crowd cheering on some of these goofy ass lines. And like there's some times in these songs where he'll fuck up, where like during Long Black Veil, like the audience starts laughing. He's like, "No laughing during the song, please." And it's just played off very well. There's like a great little like relationship that they work out with one another, in the, like, it's just so great. And he's like covering Greystone Chapel was actually written by Glenn Shirley, who was in Folsom prison at the time, and Johnny Cash, you know, addresses this, and it's a very emotional kind of moment. Um, yeah, just a powerful, and like I really love the two June Carter tracks on here, Jackson and Give My Love to Rose, like just, and these are classic, you know, tracks as well. I Got Stripes is also really great, but I really love these June Carter tracks because they really do get that relationship. You know, that movie that came out a bunch of years ago, like about Johnny Cash, that really kind of sapified that relationship. I hate to say it. It's kind of just it very much Hollywood. You know, I'm not a fan of these biopics. Every once in a while, there's a decent one, but man, they really kind of hit you over the head. But that one did nothing for me. But really, if you look into the actual story, hear Johnny talk about June, and like how long their love, like, and how powerful their love for one another was, and willing to bring out this, you know, woman that he was madly in love with at the time, bring her out in front of these psychotic prisoners, like they probably haven't seen a woman in years. You know, it's like a lot of them have been, you know, in, you know, solitary or whatever. It's just very powerful. And you know, from the sound of it, they might have been respectful. I don't know. I'm not trying to judge. um, I have seen live footage, and you know, they seem to play off each other respectfully, the performers and the prisoners. And you know, it's just an enjoyable listen, and that's the sound of, you know, the you know, anything he says that could be wrong could have turned disastrous. And just having the fun with it, you know, I was gonna say earlier, like one of my favorite lines on here is when um he does the line about like, this is being recorded live, so you can't say hell or shit or anything like that. On the record, they bleep it, and I hate to say that like censorship works, but for this, the joke, it works, because he says after, he says, "They'll probably take that one out," and on the record they did, and on the CD, I think it kind of loses a lot of that kind of humor to it. But I get why they did it on the CD. They needed that complete live kind of feel. But you know, I'm one of those guys, man. The original article is what I go back to, and this is just a perfect article, and that's why it's like my favorite album of all time. You know, it's just stuck with me so closely. It's just like it's a very comforting album. It's not in a like a really nostalgic purpose either, because I didn't grow up with this album. I kind of found it on my own in like my early teens. But man, there's just such like a home comfort. Like it's almost like a sitting by the fire kind of album. Like this can warm your entire soul for me, and it's just such a powerful album. So yeah. So, that's what I look for in a live album is like take these songs, take these concepts and evolve them, stretch them out. There's a lot of these great like heavier bands that will do these long like intricate versions of these songs, jam bands. I've never been a big Grateful Dead fan, but I know like when they play these songs live, they'll go off in all these different directions, and the songs never sound exactly the same twice. It's always something different, it's always a different take on it, and these songs evolve even more so over time. And a lot of times like having a video to go along with it, you can see like what went into the stage setup, and what the different members are doing, and like how they interact with the audience. Sometimes the audience isn't as big of a part. Some of these live recordings will not have the audience be a central part of it, because how can you? This sort of, once like amps got louder and everything like that, they did overtake the audience. And that's kind of the reason, is because in the 60s you look at stuff like the Beatles and stuff, you can't hear them over the screaming female fans. That was a big thing. So what do? They got these gigantic instruments, gigantic amplifiers, my bad. And just like that changed it, and the stuff just kept getting louder and louder and louder, and it's pretty loud to this day. Anyway, but one of my favorite concert films of all time is Talking Heads, Stop Making Sense, and this is purely the way that the stage is set up, the different members that come and go in between for different songs, seeing them move around the different parts of the set, the different outfits. Obviously, the big suit is a big part of it. So it's very hard, and it's a very long concert on the VHS. I believe it's about, I should have pulled my original copy. Like, this was a constant in my house. When I talk about, like loving Folsom Prison, even though it wasn't something I was raised on, my parents weren't really country people. This is the complete opposite. Like, this video was constantly on, even before I came around. Like, my parents would tell me stories of in the early 80s when they first got a VCR. This is the video that they would throw on all the time at parties. And when I came along, it was the same thing. We used to always like vacation with this family up in Cape Cod, and at the same house, we were all there together. And some of my favorite memories from that time is this record going on, and just the chaos and dancing and laughing and singing along and everything like that would come out of it. And there are some great songs within the movie that did not make it on here. A lot of my favorite songs are not on here. The fact that it doesn't have Heaven kind of bums me out. The fact it doesn't have Thank You for Sending Me an Angel. The fact it doesn't have Naive Melody, which is probably like one of their greatest songs. And the live version is like so beautifully composed and performed. But this does bring a lot of like the big songs within the concert. Psycho Killer, obviously, he comes out and does an acoustic version of Psycho Killer with like a boombox. This is pretty much rearranged too in the order because Swamp comes second, and that is like towards the end of the actual concert. But I think it fits there. Great chorus on there. One of the great like I don't know if it's anti-drug, but I've always interpreted it as like anti-drug dealer kind of people. But their lyrics always go like far beyond like what the initial like interpretation of it might be. Burning down the house, the version on here is far superior. The energy of it, the call and response kind of thing that the band is doing with each other. Girlfriend is better, famous for the big suit, but it's such a funky, driving, like kind of bouncy track. It's got so much. It's kind of dark sounding in a way as well. Once in a Lifetime, still a great song, even though it's kind of been played to death. The performance of it really does sell it. Um, all of David Byrne's over the top mannerisms and stuff. What a Day That Was, pretty decent song. I could have left that one off and probably gone with Naive Melody. Um, Life During Wartime, man. One of the best Talking Heads, one of the best like fucking new wave songs of all time. I just love the lyrics of that, the kind of juxtaposition. It's a very party, happy, bouncy kind of track, and it's just fucking real and depressing and hopeless as Life During Wartime. It's a song that unfortunately is increasingly with every day feeling much and much more relevant, and it's powerful and it speaks a lot to me. I love those kind of songs that are able to juxtapose like different kind of moods and feelings and stuff. And really great closer with the cover of Take Me to the River by Al Green. Like, such a great song. They do a really ripping version of it. David Byrne's really awkward vocals really kind of work on a soul kind of track. And yeah, so this was a very important record to me growing up. It's a very, um, oh man, like I have so much nostalgia attached to this. It's kind of ridiculous. And my parents were big fans of Talking Heads and David Byrne pretty much forever. I'm not a fan of his solo stuff. They would buy all those albums, and I would not. It just maybe they played them to death or something, but it just didn't have that kind of hook to them. It seemed more weird for the sake of weird, and just obtuse for the sake of it, and just like doesn't really click with me. The stuff that I'm into of his solo stuff is more stuff he would create with other artists. So like the Brian Eno album that he did in the 80s called My Life in the Bush of Ghosts. I might have brought that up in the past, but that's a very great album for me. Like, I love that album. And his collaboration later on with St. Vincent is also very good. But, like, not enough can be said about how much I love Talking Heads. And, like, the studio albums are very important to me. And, I'm definitely thankful that, it was such a part of my life for so long. Because, like, it's just, like, great music. And, I can find new meaning within this music as I grow older and, enjoy it even more so. So, yeah, Stop Making Sense. Utter classic. And the movie is just one of the greatest concert films of all time. So, next up, a little bit more of a mellow one. This is out of my parents' collection, but I don't really remember hearing this too much. But I love soul music. When I got my parents' collection, the soul music was like one of the biggest things I went to because, I already had like a lot of the like Led Zeppelin and the Doors and that kind of stuff that my dad also had. We had double copies. Because I would buy them. I'm like, I'm not gonna have your record collection. I want to get it for myself, And sure enough, ended up with his record collection. Ended up with like 3 or 4 copies of some of these titles. But this one, I got, and I threw this on a few times, and man, this moved me so much. And this is an album of warmth. Again, like Folsom Prison, it just puts me in such a like state of euphoria listening to this record, and like such an amazing songwriter and voice. This is Bill Withers at Carnegie Hall. Just amazing, amazing music, and I love Bill Withers. Just such a vulnerable sounding but powerful voice coming out of this man. Use Me, such a great little laid back kind of groove. Definitely like an AM radio kind of staple. Like such a great song. Friend of Mine, really great. Ain't No Sunshine was one of the greatest songs ever written. That's one of those songs that just moves me. And it's just such a powerful, emotional song. And it's just nothing can touch it in a lot of ways. Let Me In Your Life, just so good. For My Friend, there's a lot of very personal kind of like songs, like Grandma's Hands, just so moving and beautiful. Lean on Me, everyone knows Lean on Me. It's such a very well crafted song about your friends and being there for the people that mean the most and that you love, and it's just such a powerful record. Harlem and Cold Baloney, just like, oh my god, man, like this whole album, and it has that kind of like revolutionary aspect. People like Marvin Gaye and Al Green and stuff are writing these very revolutionary songs, and Bill Withers definitely falls into that. It's a very powerful statement with a lot of this about rising above a lot of these like kind of social kind of standpoints. It's just a very powerful album, very emotionally gripping and relatable for so many reasons. No matter who you are, I feel like this music can really speak to you in a very personal and profound way, because it's just so honest and like it's not condescending. It's very welcoming kind of music. I love this album, man. Bill Withers, live at Carnegie Hall, so good. Then you get to the other side of things where like there's no warmth in this record. It's funny. This is more of like a humorous aspect. You get like a performance out of this, and you're not. If you take this too seriously, you're completely missing the point and what makes this album great. And I could have picked so many live albums. Like, this is an artist that has like so many goddamn albums to begin with, and a good amount of them are live, especially from this incarnation of his band. So yeah, Mothers of Invention, Fillmore East, June 1971. I love this cover too, because it looks straight up like a bootleg. And this is probably my favorite Zappa live album. Like, absolutely free, technically a live album. And I do love it, but, there's a lot of studio trickery done on that. So, it's pretty much live recorded, but edited in studio. I wouldn't consider it a live album. And you also have just another band from LA, which was this Flo and Eddie period. I don't really have too much to say about that record. It's not one of my favorites. I love the version of Billy the Mountain that's arguably kind of the definitive one. It's not my favorite version. If you know anything about the history of this version of the Mothers of Invention, they would kind of do these bits. They're not exactly songs. It's just this kind of overarching bit that the entire album is kind of based around. it's this like overarching concept, and the songs are more just like different skits within this overarching like kind of story, these little vignettes. um but it's just like, yeah, there's a Carnegie Hall version of Billy the Mountain that I think is so much better. Like, it goes more into detail and has a lot more jokes. Like, the way they would do this is like they would do the same songs in different parts of the country, but when they were doing those songs, they'd like do all this research into like local, like, radio jingles, and what the great place to get burgers is, and what the local like carpet store was, and just like this whole aesthetic of the area. And really does add to this word I keep bringing up in this episode, is atmosphere. What do these live albums give you that a studio album cannot? That atmosphere, the collaboration with the audience, and also them trying things. There's some improvised kind of versions of these bits on here, and if you listen to other versions, they're completely different. It's that cool thing. It's not quite a jam band. It's very choreographed, very rehearsed, but like, it's just interesting how they're able to change up these kind of storylines and just do them differently. So yeah, like Mud Shark, it's just such a funny, like, and yeah, you could say a lot of this has not aged well. Their treatment of groupies can definitely be interpreted as misogynist. Some of the scatological humor is not comfortable. There's some definite sexual assault kind of stuff on this album that's definitely not very comfortable. It's still kind of played playfully, as opposed to something like Magdalena on Just Another Band from LA, which kind of ruins that album for me, because it's just kind of mean spirited in its goofiness. Kind of, I don't know. That album's problematic for me for that kind of song alone. But yeah, there's a lot of people who can make the complaints about this incarnation of the Mothers, and pretty much any incarnation of the Mothers. It's just this one's a little bit more in your face about it. It's a little bit, less comfortable, I guess. The 80s one as well, even though he was going more into like kind of a homophobic kind of, arguably homophobic kind of direction on that. But this is Zappa. He doesn't stand back for anybody. He pulls his punches, and maybe they're not well deserved, but man, like, he was always on this thing about like, the life on the road can fuck you up, and can mess your mind up, all this kind of stuff. And like, even though these are kind of poking fun at a lot of that stuff, you can really look at a lot of these songs as kind of like cautionary tales. Like the album Joe's Garage later on, these are cautionary tales that like, make sure you're in the right before you start doing this kind of stuff, because you can be susceptible to a lot of different things. And why I love this is because, like, nobody's spared. Yeah, they're beating on the groupies, but like, they're beating on the members of the band as well. Like, I love the track "Do You Like My New Car," which is like a lot of the previous songs, but they're more doing like a sketch kind of bit where Flo and Eddie, real names Mark Volman and Howard Kalin. So Howard is like playing the role of the singer of this band, and Mark is the girl that he's hitting on, and you have Ainsley Dunbar, Frank, and Ian Underwood playing these like other girls, and the girlfriends that came along to support Mark Volman's character. And like, the kind of back and forth is just really funny. And then you have like Frank, who's supposed to be in like the back seat, coming up with a couple of like little like comebacks and stuff, like all the different kind of weird like references on this, like the kind of lines on the. It's definitely a quotable album. It, you know, if you can get past like kind of the cringy politics of it and everything like that, it is great. And it's kind of funny how I hate the song Happy Together, but the way that they work it into this, where, you know, I want to hear the hit song with you went to the top with a bullet, you need to sing me your hit song or I'm getting out of this car right now. And they you know, stop dead the entire set and just do Happy Together, and it's awesome. And it's hearing the reaction of the crowd and everything, and they're, you know, playing up the joke and stuff. It really does well. Like they're so catchy on this album. Like, what kind of girl do you think we are? The latex solar beef, which is the grossest fucking chorus I've ever heard. Talk about your hemorrhoids, baby. Like, who says this stuff? And it's just so fucking funny, though. I hate to say it, it cracks me up, and it's such like, but the songwriting, you know, the kind of improvisational, you know, like these aspects of it, you know, they're using comedy in music. You know, does humor belong in music? That old adage that, you know, he would use later on. Just fucking insane. And they were able to do this night after night and make improvements and play around with it and kind of make stuff up as they went around. But this was a well-oiled machine. They would practice and rehearse the fucking shit out of this stuff. Like, this was the working band of all time. Whatever version you want to go with. So, yeah. Obviously, a classic, Mothers of Invention. Fillmore East, live June 71. I'm already going too long on some of these. I knew it. Up next, not going to say too much about this one. Just, this is a straight up party, this record. That's Get Your Yayas Out by the Rolling Stones. Again, Rolling Stones has like so many live albums. This one really hits for me though, like the best. Jumpin' Jack Flash, just like off the top, just such a banger of an opening track. Stray Cat Blues, Midnight Rambler, such a great live version of that. Side B though is like where it goes off. Live With Me, such a fucking bop. Man, like Goat's Head Soup, I feel like, is an album that nobody gives a lot of respect for. It's just so fucking good. Just stacked with fucking tracks. Sympathy for the Devil, obviously a classic. Honky Tonk Woman and Street Fighting Man, like, just so fucking good. And this is like the prime sleazy late 60s, like, you know, this, I think this is right before, so yeah, this wouldn't be Go Ahead Soup. I fucked that up. I forget what Live With Me is on, maybe Flowers, but this is like probably a little bit before they did this is probably Let It Bleed era or Beggar's Banquet, that kind of era. So this is before they really hit their pinnacle with stuff like Sticky Fingers, which is one of my favorite albums by them. It's just, you know, it's a party, you know, this is just a rager. Such a great album. When was this actually recorded? Does it say anywhere? I don't know. But anyway, I've always gone back to this one. Or, Ladies and Gentlemen, the Rolling Stones, that concert film. But yeah, this is classic. Definitely a party. So, you also got records that, you know, everybody kind of thinks of as studio records, but they were recorded live, and it was during a, you know, pretty important tour for these bands. And, you know, this is almost taking the place of the studio album, and this is a definite album that you had to have a live version of. If they went back and did a studio version of this, I don't think it would have worked as well. The energy wouldn't have been as high. like, you know, the play off of the audience, you know, it's like this, the famous, you know, delivery of this testimonial, yeah, like all that kind of shit. MC5, Kick Out the Jams. Oh yeah, this is just a revolution of an album, and it all comes down to the fucking, like, you know, the John Sinclair on stage is doing the whole, like, brothers and sisters, we need you to testify. It's almost like a revival, a rock and roll kind of revival, way before, you know, like Springsteen and any of those guys are doing it. This is like proto-punk rock and roll, just like giving it to you. Revolution, baby. Like, this album is a jam and a half. Like, Kick Out the Jams, they do. It is a fitting fucking title, because this is one of the most jamming records, and every song on here is a ripper. Ramblin' Rose, you know, Kick Out the Jams, obviously, with the Kick Out the Jams motherfucker at the beginning of it, just such, and it just kicks in, Rocket Reducer, number 62, just this great, like, kind of sludgy, kind of dude, like, jam kind of song. Motor City is Burning, Starship, another one of these, like, kind of more, like, kind of exploratory, psychedelic kind of jams, you know, like, these guys were hitting all the good spots of this early, you know, proto-punk, proto-metal, peak psychedelica, and this isn't for the hippies, this is for the bikers, for the punks, you know, these kind of, like, more kind of revolutionaries, and, like, when everyone thinks of the 60s, the kind of hippie stuff, this is what I go to for 60s. Like, this is a beast. MC fucking 5. And more in that kind of tradition, we got Lou Reed's Rock and Roll Animal. We got that glam happening. Man, that is glam personified. This cover is definitely iconic glam. Proto-goth in a way, too, you know. This is, like, a lot of the, you know, you could see, you know, a lot of the early goth scene, Peter Murphy and Ian Curtis, and a lot of people taking a lot from this image, this glam era Lou Reed. Great fucking performances on this, you know. Sweet Jane, probably, like, so far superior from, and I like Loaded, it's fine, I don't really like the production on it, and that's kind of been the downer of it, but the two songs off of that, Sweet Jane and Rock and Roll, on here being re-recorded, banging tunes. Like, Sweet Jane is like one of the greatest songs ever written because of this album. You know, if it wasn't re-recorded for this, it would have just been another, you know, kind of later era Velvet Underground kind of song. But man, this album makes it iconic. Heroin's a bit of a step down. I'm not as into the version on this. Same thing with White Light, White Heat. I feel like the live version, I mean the studio version, very raw and chaotic and just kicks you in the head. The way that song comes in the studio version, just like out of it's like almost feels like it's mid-song. It just like kicks in, like there's no count off, nothing, just kicks in right from the first groove. But it works here, you know. It's a good live kind of drive-in song. If I was to pick another version besides the original studio version, I'd definitely go with David Bowie's version, which I believe is on Pinups. So yeah, but yeah, this is a great performance, and you know, Heroin goes off on kind of tangents that the studio version doesn't, but it still works. It's still a powerful, very transformative version of the song. It does bring you to places, and his delivery, he's definitely, you know, top tier poetry reading level, as well as the glam. You know, it's just, there's a lot of greatness to this album, so I love Rock and Roll Animal. Now, getting into the heavy stuff, finally, we got Deep Purple, Maiden, Japan. And this is another one, like, just take these songs and just jam on them. You know, this goes with, like, what I was talking about before. One of the albums I didn't pull was, you know, Fillmore East, the Allman Brothers album. This one, I think, does it better than that album. I do love, like, Whipping Post and In Memory of Elizabeth Reed, but, is that the name of the song? I can't remember. But, this, I think, kills it, you know, like, yeah, you could say Smoke on the Water for over 10 minutes is a bit much. I think it works, you know, it's like, yeah, I was sick of that riff, but the live version of it, you know, like the audience reaction to it and like the groove, really for me, Space Truckin' on side 4, this big, long, epic version of that is fucking banging. And like, this is really like the greatest snapshot of how great fucking Richie Blackmore was as a guitarist. And this version of Deep Purple, even though like I love pretty much every incarnation of Deep Purple for the most part, this was definitely the best. This is, you know, In Rock, Fireball, Machine Head, that era of Deep Purple is just such a rockin', just tight unit of a band. You know, like John Lord's keyboards on this are just so blaringly loud and in your face. It's just so great. Like the audience is like so into it. It's like the closest you probably got at this time to like a mosh pit, you know, like you can hear them just going off cheering the entire time, and it's just the band feeds off it so well. Child in Time, man, is like one of the greatest songs ever written. Just such a powerful emotional journey, you know. It almost fits well in with Stargazer from Rainbow, another group that Richie Blackmore was involved in, and you know, like, but a different kind of emotion, you know, like, you know, Stargazer can definitely transport you to this different world and just like completely transcends reality, when Child in Time is just such a powerful delivery from Ian Gillan, and just so amazing a performance. The composition of that track is so great, and the version on here is just amazing. So yeah, I love Deep Purple, and this is probably one of my favorite Deep Purple records. And just a little bit of an aside, it's not included on this version, but the live version on this during this tour, concert, whatever it is, because it's multiple different locations, the performance of Black Knight that is part of these is amazing. I love Black Knight. It's probably one of my favorite Deep Purple singles, and I'm kind of sad it isn't involved on here. It's kind of like Live at Leeds does not include Heaven and Hell, which is one of my all-time favorite Who songs. Again, I didn't pull that one because I don't own a physical copy of it, but definitely Live at Leeds, man, is a solid, almost proto-sludge metal kind of guitar sound on some of those songs, especially Heaven and Hell, and their like kind of versions of like My Generation and some of the other songs on that. And this is early, you know, this is like 72, just like Live at Leeds was like 70 or 71. So this is like, you know, metal wasn't quite a thing yet, you know, like maybe you have the first Black Sabbath record, but that's about it. This is just such a driving, heavy, fucking classic live album. So yeah, Deep Purple, Man, Japan. Man, I'm not even halfway done, man. Up next, this one's kind of a little bit of a cop out. A lot of people probably would not go to this one. The sound is kind of weird, but I do like how they're able to take these tracks and just completely redo them and kind of in a way, some of them even get heavier. And yeah, this isn't the lineup I would have loved to do it. It's not Blizzard. This is Ozzy Osbourne's Speak of the Devil. This is from a concert in September of 1982 at the Ritz in New York. Great artwork on this. And this is pretty much Ozzy with the Brad Gillis, Rudy Sarzo incarnation of the band. So I think this has to be post. Is this post or before Blizzard? I can't think. I'm pretty sure it's post Blizzard. 82, so that must have been around the time that, Blizzard was over, maybe around the time that I can't remember when Randy died, but this is definitely like the next, and this is all like pretty much Sabbath song. Yeah, it's all just like interpretations of Sabbath songs, Symptom of the Universe, Snowblind, Black Sabbath. You got all the classics. You even have Never Say Die, which the version on here is way better than the studio version. Incredible, man. Like, and these are powerful versions. Even Paranoid, it's a much better version on this album. Probably because I've heard the studio version to fucking death. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty solid. It's a different sound. It's a lot sludgier. It's a lot heavier. It's definitely got its 80s isms about it as well, but, it's definitely, some really good versions of these songs. And I love Black Sabbath, so hearing, like, updated versions, you can't replace Iommi and fucking Geezer Butler, but they do a pretty damn good job with what they got on this record. So, yeah, Speak of the Devil. Now we're into the metal. Of course, I am going to talk about... Oh, and No Sleep Till Hammersmith by Motorhead. For some reason, thought I had that. Do not have it. So that's one I got to add to the list. The want list. But I had to go with the big two of this era of metal. We got Judas Priest, Unleashed in the East. And this is an iconic record. A lot of the versions of these songs people go to are on this record. I love the studio versions of these songs, but man, this definitely, like when they do Exciter and Sinner on this record, they're just so much more powerful live. Ripper, Victim of Changes, Diamonds and Rust is fucking incredible. Such a great cover in their career, like that's probably one of their greatest covers they did was Diamonds and Rust. Just a completely different, incarnation of that song than, the Joan. And I do love the Joan Baez version. It's a very powerful, beautiful folk tune, 60s folk, psychedelic, a little bit of psychedelica, more from like, the recording of it. But man, when Halford hits the notes of like Diamonds and Rust, you feel it. It is heartbreaking, heart-wrenching, fucking power. And it's such like, but the band behind him is playing with such machismo and gusto that it's this kind of power to it. It's such a great album. Tyrant, like just all the classic songs off of like Sad Wings and Stained Class, but just revved up for a live audience. And this is the beginning of the Hellbent for Leather kind of biker, S&M gear kind of era of the Priest look. And this is when Priest was really becoming what we think of as Judas Priest from here on out. They kind of went through their like kind of flowery, hippie kind of era at first. And this album, he's coming out on the fucking motorcycle, he's hitting heavier and higher notes than he was ever hitting before. Yeah, Unleashed in the East, just a complete ripper. And because I'm talking about Priest, you know, going a little bit later, we have to talk about Iron Maiden Live After Death. Probably cited by a lot of people as one of the greatest 80s metal live albums. You know, I don't want to completely disagree. I just feel like it's a very late on the tour performance. And you could tell Bruce's voice is starting to go a little bit. They're not, you know, at the same, you know, if they did one like mid-tour, I think it would have worked a lot better. But I really do love this. You know, this is another one that definitely helps by having the visual accompanying with it. This is definitely a song, an album, a live show that way back in the day, if I had gotten the opportunity, I would have gone to. I would have loved to see this. You have the big Eddie as like in Egypt kind of backdrop. You know, a lot of this stuff is coming off of like Power Slave. And you have all the classics: Aces High, 2 Minutes to Midnight, Revelations, Flight of Icarus, Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, Hallowed Be Thy Name, Iron Maiden. Like, there is no classic hit that is not on here. They end with like Phantom of the Opera. You know, a couple of songs I'm not too big on. Show 'Em the Damned, to Die With Your Boots On. I've never been songs I'm too big on. You know, Run to the Hills again. I do really like the version of Run to the Hills on this. You know, it's they deliver it better with like a live kind of aspect. But man, like, just really great versions of these songs. And you have like, you know, Bruce was definitely the champion of like, you know, making the entire, you know, stadium into just like this. It almost feels like a living room. You know, it's just like he plays the same to like thousands and thousands of people. It makes you feel like it's only like 100 or something like that. He has this intimacy, but also just such a power and a command of the microphone and a command of the stage, and just like the energy. They're all running around and doing like running upstairs, doing all these crazy kind of acrobatics on stage and stuff like that. The band is just like incredibly tight all the way through. Steve Harris as a bass player is just like untouchable at this time. You know, just insanely good as a songwriter and a bassist. Just like really the unsung backbone of Iron Maiden. Like, he is Iron Maiden. You know, you got Bruce on vocals, and he does the job of being kind of the mascot, but man, Steve Harris is definitely the top when it comes to this band. So yeah, fucking Iron Maiden, amazing. Next up, another great metal band. Just another fucking vocalist who can command a crowd like nobody else. Just fucking beautiful band. This is Candlemass Live. I believe this is a 1990 live show. They tell you the date. It's Stockholm in June 9th, but does not tell you a year for some reason. I believe it's 1990 or 91. This is amazing. Like, they do these songs so great live. Well of Souls, Bewitched, Solitude, Under the Oak. Another one, like, there's no like shortage of any of the big important hits that made Candlemass how great they are. You know, Samaritan and At Gallows End, The Sorcerer's Pledge, Through the Infinite Halls of Death. Like, you get like the first 2 or 3, you know, classic Candlemass records, and they're done live. It's just unbeatable. And his kind of, you know, delivery, you know, Messiah, just busting out these songs, just so fucking beautiful. Just such an extremely talented vocalist. You know, he is borrowing from like Dio and, you know, Bruce Dickinson, all these different kind of, you know, metal gods. You know, even Ian Gillan. You know, you can hear a bunch of influence coming off of that, like more epic Deep Purple stuff, like Child in Time. You can hear that on this record. You can hear that in Candlemass, especially at this time. It's just such a powerful band, such great like musicianship, and like the songs are just so emotional and, you know, atmospheric and dark and brooding. It just does everything so well on this album. And, you know, just the live aspect is just another one of those little pieces of it that works so well. So yeah, Candlemass live, amazing. Okay, so moving on to hardcore. Another show that I wish I would have been at. And, you know, they've reunited since then, and that show I wish I was at as well. But yeah, this is Have Heart's last show, 10/17/09, put out by Bridge 9. Man, this band, I've talked about the things they carry. It's one of my favorite hardcore records of all time. Definitely my favorite modern hardcore record. There's a couple that come close. Still Nothing Moves You by Ceremony. Few others, but man, this just like speaks to me so deeply, you know, especially the last few years when I've been going through a lot of emotional and a lot of kind of late era maturity, you know, like trying to change my life around and do stuff more positive for myself, you know, like stand up for myself and, you know, really try to refine who I am and what I believe in. And this album has that album has definitely been there for me. And these live versions, you know, just the way the audience is like, you know, what I love about hardcore, especially live hardcore, is the audience participation. You're just as much of the show as the band is. They really, you know, are able to, you know, command the stage very well in a different way, because you got guys doing backflips and, you know, stage diving. You got, you know, the pit going crazy, you know, but they're really, you know, going out of their way to be like, hey, pick that guy up, help these people out, you know, respect each other. We're all like, you know, getting out this aggression, you know, this violence, you know, the way that people might see it, but like, don't hurt each other. Don't be malicious. Don't be a dick. You know, just, we're all in this together, and this is a powerful statement we are making with hardcore. It means so much to so many people. It's this community that brings out a lot of the greatness within people that probably did not realize what kind of greatness they had. You know, songs like The Machinist, just that powerful kind of, you know, the voice of those who are not able to speak up, who are too scared or too held back by society to like scream it out. We are the voice of that, you know, of those people. That's what they are, you know. And it's like we're all together, you know. There's no band almost. It's like we're all, you know, have heart. It's very powerful kind of statements throughout this album. Life is hard enough. You know, Watch Me Sink and Watch Me Rise. You know, that, you know, that kind of peak depression and just like what's, you know, just like I don't care anymore. Nothing. There's no more love. There's no more compassion. Just everyone's fighting each other. And then you get to Watch Me Rise. It's like, this is the song that, like, I cannot hear this song without just, like, breaking down into tears and just screaming every single line with everything left in me. You know, it's just such a powerful statement. And that's why that album is so important to me, is those kind of powerful statements. Something more than ink. Probably, like, one of the most, like, honest and, like, powerful straight edge anthems. You know, you got stuff like, you know, Project X, Straight Edge Revenge. You got Uniform Choice and their stuff. You know, you even got Out of Step by Minor Threat. And, you know, they do come off as preachy, but like Something More Than Ink almost feels like, you know, this is a choice I made for me. This is why it's important. This is why I made this choice. Is it for everybody? No, but the people that make this pledge and make this choice make it for the right reasons. Make it, you know, to help others, to like reach out and like be there for yourself and for everybody else. Just like Armed with a Mind, just such a powerful message to that song as well. Um, you know, Unbreakable. Just like I get choked up every time I hear this version because he dedicates it to his dad, and that's such a powerful song about like looking at, you know, like your elders, and you know, like the lessons you can learn from the way they live their lives. And you know, it's never too late to change. It's never too late to redefine your life and redefine how people look at you from the outside, and how can you overcome these stereotypes that are being launched at you at every turn. Very powerful, just such a beautiful performance. And the amount, and you know, it's all going towards like what women's shelters, like all the proceeds that this concert would accumulate would go to all these great causes, which is definitely something that is very important within hardcore, because it is very focused on community. You know, you know, I'm a punk. You know, I love the outsider kind of, you know, loner mentality, but you know, there is a community within hardcore that I feel very passionate about, and this album definitely does encapsulate a lot of what I feel passionate about in hardcore. And yeah, you put on this record and you feel like you're right in there singing along, and you cannot help but just go ape shit. Such a great fucking live document. Just so powerful. So, yeah, and then you got bands who, you know, have that one album that's like huge. And, you know, they're willing to come back a few years later and, you know, maybe put a different spin on it, and you get stuff like Life of Agony, 20 years strong, of River Runs Red, probably one of the best 90s hardcore. We're getting more into like a metallic hardcore, but you also have elements of stuff that would come later as far as like alt rock, the post grunge kind of sound. You got a lot of influence from you know, you got a lot of influence from this going into like even stuff like nu metal later on. Some of the more melodic nu metal bands definitely took a lot from this. You know, Mellow Death and the more melodic, like metal, like extreme metal, the more melodic side of things. You know, a lot of them could probably reference this album. And this is a few years ago, so there have been some, you know, changes within the lives of the members of this band. Don't want to go too much into that because it can be a little bit controversial, and I don't want to dead name or shame anybody or, you know, anything like that. And I feel like I've already said too much, but yeah, like I love River Runs Red. It's another one of those very like kind of painful but very honest and very liberating kind of albums, you know, just so relatable too, you know, not really knowing where you belong and like who's gonna accept you, and like all this there's just so much going on, and you know, it's all coming from this very traumatic, brutal childhood and family life, and you know, the fights going on between family members and everything like that. And even though, you know, I never had that in my life, I've seen a lot of it. I've been around a lot of it. And, you know, there is some of it I can relate to in my own self, you know, my own self-rejection. And, you know, I've always said, like, sort of the role model I built inside of myself is a toxic, evil bastard sometimes. And yeah, this album really does. I can filter that kind of conversational aspect that I have with that inner self. And it's like, no, I'm better than you. You think I'm shit, but I'll show you. You know, I will overcome what you have put in my way, these obstacles. And you know, the song Underground is such a powerful statement, again, about hardcore and this community that we have built up. Like, how that gives a voice to people, how it gives, like, this power to people who are marginalized, who are pushed aside, who are told we can never amount to what, you know, the top tiers of society have, you know, shown us. You know, we're sold this whole idea that we'll make it up to these levels, and then when it doesn't match, we're like, well, what happened? What did I fail at? And it's albums like this that help you realize, well, maybe it's not you failing. Maybe a lot of other people have failed you. And that's okay. It is not your fault. What you got to do is stand up and fight for what you really are, overcome what people think of you, and just keep living for those who are in it and who care, and, you know, just continue, persevere. You know, you'll come out stronger. And that's why this album is just so incredibly powerful. And this live version is pretty good. You know, I've talked a lot about how important, you know, like River Runs Red is in this segment, but like this does a good job of it, you know, like getting the crowd all pumped up and everything, and, you know, the delivery of these songs. It's just very solid. And, you know, I could say a lot about this band in a different video, but yeah, it's a definite powerful statement. Hell yeah. And, you know, wanted to go with a classic Agnostic Front live at CBGBs, an Effect OG copy. I got lucky with this one, man. This showed up in, like, New London years ago, and I picked it up, and, man, this is a lucky score, because I don't know if I could find a clean copy of this as easily or as, you know, cheap as I did back in the day. You know, you got all the hits on this, you know, Blind Justice, Victim in Pain, Public Assistance, Strength, Power, Anthem, United Blood, Discriminate Me, Your Mistake, The Eliminator. It just does not stop. This is like Agnostic Front at the top of their game. You know how it is. Just fast, raging. You know, it's amazing that, like, all these, like, CBGBs cut records were in such a tiny little place. I never went there, but I've seen footage. You know, it's definitely smaller than most of the clubs I go to. You know, like, it's insane. And just, like, how on top of everybody is, how packed it is in there, how sweaty and aggressive it is. And this band does not miss at all. It just rages on. You know, this is, you cannot derail this fucking shit. And even later on, when they redid this concert, and, like, with more modern songs, the modern lineup and stuff, still killed it, man. That album still kind of rules. I'm not as big on their more hate-breedy kind of era, but, man, Agnostic Front always kills it. Really great band. Iconic as fuck. And, yeah, live at CBGBs. And, man, that cover, even though I'm not very patriotic, I do adore that cover. And that's such an iconic cover. Like, you can't beat it. All right. Some Oi. We got Sparrer Live and Loud. Like, you know, I can't say much about Sparrer, one of my all-time favorite Oi, favorite punk bands in general. You got all the hits. You know, again, like, I love live albums where it's just like, let's give you all of the songs, you know, that you want to hear live, you know, all the hits. They even do like White Riot by The Clash, really good version of that. You even have The Sun Says. You know, I like how they worked in a couple of the songs off of Running Riot in '84, which is an album that was kind of, you know, not a lot of people are into. You know, I don't hear a lot of people talk about it. And I do love it. It's more of a new wave kind of vibe, but man, the songs are just so catchy. You know, this Sparrer is just the king of great, great anthems, and like that's what Oi is all about for me. Is these like kind of like football hooligan chants. You know, it's just like, you know, audience participation, as I keep saying. It's just such a like fun record. And you know, since I'm talking about Sparrer, another one of my favorite Oi bands of all time is Sham 69. And this one's kind of weird because this is a half live, and then you got the studio side of Tell Us the Truth with Hey Little Rich Boy, I'm a Man, I'm a Boy. You know, kind of continuing sort of the sound that they had on That's Life, which is probably my favorite Sham 69 album. But the live side on this is killer. You know, a lot of great stage banter from Jimmy Percy. This is a great band because like they weren't afraid to like really stand up for themselves, you know, really talk about like, you know, you had a lot of sketchy shit happening in you know, Oi, especially at this time. I believe this is like 78 or 79. So it's, you know, it's before the whole screwdriver thing and stuff. But the National Front was a big deal within this kind of scene. You know, they were already infiltrating a lot of these bands. You still had a lot of bands. You know, everybody cites Screwdriver, but man, there was bands before they even switched over that were coming out that were very, very in your face about their far right politics. And Sham 69 was definitely not that. They were definitely a more street conscious kind of band. And these songs are great for that kind of, you know, skinhead vibe, but, you know, don't get ripped off. You know, the song Rip Off, such a fucking anthem, really going up against, you know, like the new sedition, that seditionaries kind of thing, you know, the King's Road, you know, all these kids talking about like, you know, punk rock and being from the streets and everything like that, but they like buy their fucking clothes from a boutique store that's overpriced. And you know, who's getting ripped off? It's not them, it's you. They're making off with your dignity and your fashion and everything. And it's more about like, you know, we kids got to come together and like live our own lives and have our own fucking voices within this. You cannot tell us that we need to buy into your bullshit. Like that's not what it's all about. Postal Breakout is just such an anthem, you know, one of those great songs. Everybody's covered it, but like, you know, it's such a powerful, you know, song for what it is, you know, this kind of, you know, yeah. And you got like George Davis is Innocent, you know, so, you know, just great. Ulster's got this kind of more of a critique on, you know, like, are you marching for the right reasons? And you gotta, you know, be able to admit that, you know, if shit blows up in your head, in your face, you know, if it backfires on you, what are you gonna do in that situation? You know, is it worth taking these risks? And if it is, are you gonna fight with everything you have in order to, you know, so not only you can win, but those around you can win. You know, you can, you know, overthrow some of these, you know, you're not gonna pull and break down the cops. You're not gonna do anything. You just need to know how to stand up for yourself and others, and you know, stay one step ahead of them. You know, so like this is a great live album. And even like, you know, the studio side is pretty solid as well. You know, Sham 69 never disappoints, just constantly cranking out anthems. But yeah, the live side on this, definitely one of my favorites. And I'll end this kind of in the same vein. You know, something, I don't know if you can really consider this technically a live album because it's a bonus to a studio. Just gonna show off the main cover. This is the second disc of the Christ the Album Crass. Well forked, but not dead. And this is weird because there is like studio, different kind of interludes or skits or whatever kind of experiments going on throughout this, you know, different little bits of poetry. But really what stands out on this is the live performances. Like, energy is like all over this. Like, from what I know, there's not any like full, like, well shot live footage of Crass. You know, it probably wasn't a thing back then, and this is like the closest we can get to that. And just how powerful this band was live. Like, they were a militant machine, and just people getting into it, man. It's just such a powerful band, a powerful statement. You know, their entire career, as short as it was, you know, the 7 years that they were like at their height. It's just such a great band, and you feel that live. You know, it feels like a rally, you know, but just, these are such great iconic songs. Punk's not dead. I mean, Punk is Dead. You got a Band from the Roxy. They've Got a Bomb. Contaminational Power. This is mostly taking from like the first two records, even though I think, if I'm remembering correctly, they do have Beatrix Bribe, and one of the other songs off of Penis Envy, which is my personal favorite Crass album. Really powerful performances from this group. You know, you got people coming in and out of this group. Obviously, it's less of a band as it is like a communion, you know, community, you know, the communal kind of aspect to this band. You know, different singers coming at different times, but it is insanely powerful. And these kind of sound collage interludes throughout this really do add to the aesthetic of it. Nagasaki Nightmare on this, especially that little sound collage with, you know, the clips from reports from Hiroshima and Nagasaki and all these kind of, you know, stuff that's now iconic in the anarcho-punk scene because it's been referenced by so many other bands. You know, and he began to suffocate and his possessions multiplied, which was popularized by Crass on their Monuments album later on. Just really powerful statement, passion. And, you know, you got songs like Big A, Little A, I Ain't Thick, It's Just a Trick. These kind of songs that are very critical of this kind of, you know, you want to be an anarchist, burn everything down kind of mentalities. But, like, what are you going to do when it all burns down? Who's going to stand up for you? What do you go from here kind of aspects? Just questioning a lot of this kind of, you know, reactionary kind of mentality that people can tend to have. And I love Crass. Like I always say, I'm probably going to do a video on them at some point once I get a couple more albums that I need to get. Very important band early on for me. I believe I talked about Feeding the 5,000 in a previous video. And yeah, so Crass live, second disc of Christ the Album. Very good stuff. And I do love Christ the Album. I do think of the, you know, sort of typical Crass kind of sound that does work the best. It's got the best use of sound collage and samples and little kind of things like that. So yeah, it is a very important album to me, but really I keep going back to that like live disc because it's just so good. So yeah, that's this live video, you know, talking about my favorite live albums. And like I said, there's so many more I could have pulled. Kink's One for the Road is really good. Like I said, Live at Leeds, Do Not Own, but that's a definite banger. USA by King Crimson, Stage by David Bowie. David Bowie's got quite a bit of really great live albums. There's a really good live Peter Gabriel record where he's playing a lot of the stuff off of the first 4 self-titled records. I love those first 4 Peter Gabriel records. Just really powerful stuff. You know, you can go on and on. It's where you guys come in. As usual, go down there in the comments. Did I miss one of your favorite live records? Do you have any reaction to the live records that I mentioned? Is there any of these artists that I mentioned who have an album you like better that's a live recording? That you can, you know, bring up and put it down there in the comments, man. Like this video, subscribe if you have not already. It's amazing. I'm still getting so much attention off that Heavy video. Like, it's insane. It's outdone every other video on my channel by almost 400 views. But I'm happy about it because that is really one of my favorite videos I've done. And, you know, it really does illustrate how important Gizm was not only for me, but how important a musical legacy that band has on so many people. And, you know, their, you know, reach keeps getting bigger and bigger every year. And I love to see it because that band deserves so much more respect than they're even getting now. They're just such an important band. So I'm happy everybody's really enjoying that video. It's getting a lot of great views. And yeah, I'm just loving talking to you guys every week. I say it all the time, you know, and everyone else says it, but man, I really do love the community, this vinyl community, this Blu-ray community we got here on YouTube. It's all positive. As I've talked on Instagram this past weekend, not everything on this site is positive, but this community we got, I'm very happy about. Yeah, I'm not into policing people, but, you know, if I don't want no body shaming, no sexism, homophobia, racism, any of that shit. And you guys are doing an awesome job in keeping on topic and making some great recommendations, correcting me on stuff, and, you know, informing me maybe there's some kind of fact I messed up. And yeah, I want you to call me out on those kind of things, and, you know, obviously be civil about it, but yeah, I'll learn from you. You learn from me, I learn from you, you know. That's what it's all about. So if you want to find me on social media, and I can you can find out what I was complaining about. You can look me up on Instagram at the Hordes of Manzerfaust, and that'll about do it. Whew, this was an epic. So yeah, this is Mike Manzer with another Manzerfaust Productions video. Stay fucking metal.